Good afternoon. Okay, so we get started. Hi, Ankur. Ankur, hi.
Hey, hi, Shivesh. I'm sorry, I was
Hi.
on mute.
Okay. Hi. So we have more students trickling in, but we just start, right? So, okay. Boys and girls, good afternoon and welcome to the HIGMID show. You know HIGMID, right? All of you. Do all of Does everyone know what is HIGMID? HIGMID?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
very
sir.
good. By now, everyone should know what is HIGMID. Fantastic. HIGMID stands for How I Got My Idea. And today we have two very, great guys who are there and they're doing stuff which is very interesting. I thought that we introduce them to you. Amit Uppal and we have worked together long back, and he's done multiple startups. A quick introduction. He did engineering, computer science. Then he worked with Infosys in the US, and then he worked with a private equity fund doing investments where both of us were working together. And then he has done a couple of startups, but now he's doing something which is very exciting, which is called Fractional, Frxnl, and we are going to be discussing about that. We also have Ankur Grover, who's another person who I have worked with for some time. And Ankur is one of the smartest computer scientists that you can find, right? Ankur has again done multiple startups, and he and Amit, they joined together to to build Fractional, and we will be interviewing them. But before I get started, very quickly, I want to ask: have all of you submitted your ideas at the Youth Ideathon in the online idea box? If you have, give me a show of thumbs so that I know that you are on that. Okay. So Bhavya is saying, sir, it is in progress, not yet. So we are looking for everyone to be submitting their ideas. You can submit as many ideas. So it's not just one idea or so, but you can go on and submit as many ideas. And so this is MEPSC Bajaj Allianz Youth Ideathon powered by ThinkStartup. And we really want not only you to submit your ideas, but also to be leaders and ask your friends to be submitting those ideas at youthideathon.com, right? Shivani Kapoor, who's the person behind Think Startup, she's been contemplating a few things, and stay tuned for more announcements. Now, some of you are Youth Idea ambassadors. We will have another session for the newly joined Youth Idea ambassadors. The message will come. So I'm done with the announcement bit, and over to the people who we want to listen to, right? They are someone who I really adore. They are someone who are doing great job, and I'm all ears to them. So Amit, tell me, do I leave it, Amit and Ankur? Do we leave the floor to you guys, or do we do an interview format?
That's all right. We can keep it open. And while we speak, you can raise your hands, or you can ping, or you could just, speak out aloud. So, thank you,
Yeah.
Shivesh. It has always been a pleasure working with you and knowing you and the kind of initiatives that you have been doing. I think it's absolutely fantastic. On a personal note, Shivesh is a mentor of mine. So I think the honor is all mine. So let me give you a little bit more brief about how we kind of came around doing fractional. So, life started in a normal course, doing your engineering, you do your. In those days, you were kind of everybody was getting into Infosys. It was just not me. Incidentally, Ankur, who's my co-founder, he also worked with Wipro. So एक ही थाली के हैं सब. So then I went on to do my MBA, and I entered the world of finance. And this was more specialized finance. This was real estate investing. So I spent my formative years over there, and it was quite a stark contrast to the world of technology. Real estate is probably has a unique distinction of the lowest adoption of technology. From technology to high technology to zero technology, it was an interesting move. But at the same time, real estate gave its own learnings. It had a lot of excitement because you were creating, a more brick and mortar stuff. There was a lot more money involved in comparatively in those days. If you just looked at balance sheets, real estate projects, investments, the money that you were almost literally moving had a significantly higher scale. So there was a lot of excitement around that, and India has been building over the last couple of decades, and probably the end of 2000s was when India was still doing very well, shining, and it was in tandem with the world growth, trying to take the mantle of leadership globally. Real estate is a key sector of the whole economy, so of course there was a lot of positivity around it. So while all that happened, every industry goes through a certain cycle. Real estate also underwent its low phase. That was a time when, having worked closely with a lot of entrepreneurs, because we were in the investment function, what happens there is that you invest money with entrepreneurs and you expect them to do their magic and bring higher returns back to the capital allocator. So, having worked with entrepreneurs, the idea was to be independent and do something, and that is where I went into people side of business, and we were doing consulting, we were hiring, executive search, and the idea at the same time was to do something which makes a larger impact. So, this is probably my second startup with Ankur. We were trying to build a marketplace for jobs in the hiring space, and it had its own unique uh, features and distinction. Unfortunately, COVID struck at the time when we were just about to take off, and it was all self-financed, and uh, and we did not know. So, COVID, when the first wave struck, it was the darkest phase because people had never seen anything. At least our generation had never seen anything like that. So it was highly unpredictable. Though as an entrepreneur, you try to sustain for a little while, keep the ship moving. Even if it is moving at a very slow speed every day. Uh, but that was probably the time when we actually have three co-founders. The third co-founder is also somewhere related to me and Shivesh. We also worked at the same investment fund, and the idea of fractional emerged. Now, fractional is a concept where uh, people. So let me put it this way: people in India love real estate. 80% and over of their capital is invested in real estate on average in India. Now that's a huge thing, right? Imagine every 8 of 10 rupees, whatever investment savings people have, is into one asset class. So that is the kind of distinction it holds. But at the same time, the investment is not the most efficient. People end up buying houses which don't give so much return. At the end of the day, they give like 2 to 3% yield. What that means is if you're buying a house of 1 crore, you get about 2 lakh or 3 lakh rupees. But at the same time, FDs generate more and all that. So there's a certain economics to it. So what
Amit,
fractional does?
can I just step in, Amit?
Yeah, sure.
Just to make things easier for these are all school students. So
Okay.
maybe some of the terms could be a little difficult for them. So boys and girls, I want your participation. What's the average cost of a home? It is one of the most expensive decisions that a parent take. Anyone?
40 lakh.
40 lakh, 50 lakh, 60 lakh, 70 lakh. If you are in a bigger city, it's 100 lakhs and all that, right? As compared to it, everything else is much smaller. And Amit and Ankur, they are talking about those kind of investment, right? Amit, over to you.
Yeah, let me just step it all down a
Yeah.
little bit. I'm sorry, guys. I'm happy to take questions. So let's put it this way: real estate is expensive. What we do is we allow multiple people to buy into one real estate asset. Okay, one investment. Okay, let's assume that there is this piece of land. Instead of one person putting in all the money and buying it, we have multiple people coming in and buying it through our online process. So anybody sitting anywhere across the globe can invest, and it not only increases the potential of what one can actually invest in. What that means is somebody earns, say, 10 lakh rupees a year. They probably are looking at buying a property which is maybe 20 lakhs, 30 lakh rupees. Now they can take 5 lakhs of their own savings and invest in a property which could be like 10 crores, right? Because there are so many others who are also participating. So what it does is higher the quality of the property, higher is the investments, higher is the attraction. So that is what we are trying to do. So what we realized over a period of time is that if you give people freedom to invest collectively into high quality properties, it works. And that was a big gap in the industry that was not being fulfilled. People go through a lot of challenges when they buy a property. It's tiresome, it's cumbersome, it had its own challenges, there are frauds. So we kind of come in and we take away all those risks and give them a good quality property. And they invest little money, which is more affordable. So they are happier, they are richer. And that's the idea that we kind of work with. And it was a combination of the real estate work that I did initially, the investment industry in which we work. What investment industry does is they put money in projects, like one invests in stock market and expects their money to grow. So you invest money in companies and they do real estate projects. So that is what we were doing. And I also worked in with people, right? People related business. So that helped me understand their psychology better, their preferences better. So that, this is more of a culmination of different things that I did. So yeah, so that's my story. Shivesh, is that all right? Do you want me to add
Very good.
anything?
Very good. So Amit, thanks very much. Ankur, before you come to fractional part, could you quickly run through all the various startups that you have done, all the
Sure.
multiple nice startups that you have done?
All right. So out of college, I joined Wipro, again, like a traditional job out of any engineering college that most people take. And from there, I moved on to Arisent. But I always had the startup bug. I was just doing the job to get enough knowledge uh, and to be capable enough, and so that I can actually build something of my own. Because just out of college, you have a lot of ideas, but you don't have the experience or the expertise to actually build and run anything. Building something, what I learned over the year is you can always build a product, but it is much harder to actually run a product after it is live. Getting a product live is much easier than actually taking it to the very next step, that is getting your first customer or getting your first few users on board. So that is why I got into the corporate sector, where the mature models and senior people and experienced people were there, from whom I could actually learn and get a hold of the industry and get the understanding and knowledge that I needed to start off on my own. So from there, the next progression for me was to actually start a software services company, because the product side, the risks are higher, the services, the risk is slightly lower. So the first step that I took was a low risk one. I started a software services company where I was building products for other companies, other startups, established companies and startups at the same time actually. So my job was to build the product, deploy it for them, manage it for them, and get paid to do my job. Whatever the product gained, whatever the value of the product, it was theirs. So that was the next progression for me, to get to a point where I have independently handled products. I have gone from the idea stage to the deployment to the management of the product, and not actually looked at the business side of it. So that was the second progression for me. So from there, I actually started building my own products. That is the time when I actually started working on my own ideas. The first idea that we started off was something very simple, very basic. It was just a task management solution. We called it Cario. Like something as like the way we say it to somebody in Hindi, yaar ye Cario mere liye. So it was like a roommate telling their other roommate ki ghar aate aate doodh le aana. Or a manager telling their employee that you need to deliver this particular task by the end of this week, or a teacher telling a student that this is a task that you need to complete by this weekend or over the summer vacation. So the way we designed that product was that it was so simple and so basic that you just needed an email ID of the person and you could assign them a task, or you could also create an open-ended task. For example, you wanted to contribute to the reforestation of the earth, and you create an open-ended task that says plant a tree, and there could be 100,000 people across the world that actually pick up that task and plant a tree, and then they say done. So that particular task will have 100,000 people working on it and completing it. There was also a possibility of actually creating a task that could be assigned to a group or split between multiple people. So it had all those features. So we ran that for a while, but again, we couldn't really get too much traction in it. The product lived for a few years, and then I moved on to the next bigger idea. So this idea actually was when I met Shivesh, it was actually built with one of very close friends and partners of Shivesh, and again a very close friend of mine. And most of this idea actually was conceptualized in Shivesh's office itself. So that was HighCurate. That was a recruitment solution actually with a bit of artificial intelligence built into it. So the biggest problem that the recruiters were facing, from what we could understand with our interviews and the research that we did of the market, and again, this is a very important part when you are coming up with an idea, when you want to start building something, you might think something is good and it is amazing and it will definitely work. But getting the feedback from the stakeholders and the people who are actually going to use that product is really important. So before you start implementing anything, or before you actually start putting your concept, translating it into a product, it is very important to get the right kind of inputs from the right kind of people. And again, if you can find people who are very critical and who will find a way to find fault with your idea, they are the best kind of the people to actually talk to before you start implementing anything, because then you'll have all the possible pitfalls out of the way, because they would have asked all the critical questions in the very beginning. So we went to all these people who were recruiters, who were consultants, and we asked them what your pain point is. So let's say a company wants to post a job. So that particular job posting comes to a recruiter. Sorry. So that particular job posting comes to a recruiter. They post the JD on certain portals, or they share it within their network, and then they start getting all the relevant CVs. And then they process and they review those CVs, process those CVs, and then forward the relevant ones to the person managing the job on the company side. This entire process takes a minimum of a week. So what our product did was, and all of these recruiters over the past few years, whatever CVs that they have received, they're all sitting in their hard disk somewhere, and they don't really have access to all that data. It's sitting there, but it's useless for them. So the tool we created was, they could pull, let's say somebody is sitting on 100,000 CVs or 500,000 CVs. All they had to do was give access to that storage to our software. Our software would process all those CVs, upload them into the system, parse them field by their name, their contact details, their qualifications, their skills. So break it down into these parts and make all of the CVs searchable by our AI. So now the moment a recruiter posts a JD, so what our AI would do is it will parse the JD, break it down into the profiles, and pick the best 100 profiles it can find within the database that match that job. And now all the recruiter has to do is look at those 100 CVs, pick a few, hit send, and all those CVs have been forwarded to the job manager within the company. So a process that was taking a week has been reduced to a few minutes. And the entire process beyond that had also been automated in a similar way. So that was a product that we created, that we launched, and we actually gave it to a few recruiters who really loved it. So that was the second startup that I did on the product side. And then beyond that, I actually moved into the blockchain space. So this is like the most novel up and coming technology in the finance world. And almost 5-6 years back, I moved into that. So again, to get into the blockchain, to understand the tech better, I did a few services projects so that I could get a better grip of it, while I let my ideas simmer and seep in and form in a better way. And then I started my first blockchain startup that was called Kimio. So Kimio was actually a video sharing platform where you could actually make real money by watching videos or uploading content. So let's say you're a content creator who posts videos on TikTok. So similarly, you create a video, you post it on Kimio, and you publish it for anybody to view. So any person watching your video is getting paid in cryptocurrency, and at the same time, more number of people watching your video, you keep getting paid in cryptocurrency. So so how we were doing this was, there is a currency called Kin. They have a program where they give out rewards for the usage of their tech. So we were creating these wallets on the Kin platform, and for every user that we were onboarding, and for every activity that the user was doing on our platform, Kin was paying us, and we were forwarding those rewards to our users. So imagine the amount of time that you're spending on TikTok right now, and you getting paid for that, or any video that you post on TikTok, you getting paid to actually when people watch it. So that was a startup that we ran for 2 years. So so this is where actually, so when we started it, we had decided that at the end of 24 months, we are going to evaluate it. If we have hit a million users, because a video platform without a million users is of no value whatsoever, actually. So we had given ourselves 24 months to get the product to a point where we had a million users. So we could get to 150,000 users, but we were not even close to the mark that we were looking at. So that is the time when we actually decided to shut it down and move on to the next startup. Because again, uh, when you're doing a startup, it's good to be emotional and attached to your product, but you should not be so attached that you cannot move on to the next good thing. There are always more opportunities. You should give everything your best shot. You should try your level best, but you also have to know when to quit, because otherwise you'll just keep digging a hole that keeps getting deeper and deeper, and then it will be very hard for you to get out of it. So if I had not stopped that, I would not have actually started off with Rahul and Amit, and we would not have been building this amazing startup that is Fractional that Amit talked about. So
Fantastic.
here,
Ankur,
yeah.
can I just come in? So great, boys and girls. I think the most amazing story, right? From a recruitment platform or Career to a recruitment platform to blockchain and now into real estate, right? Into property management, right? So, or property, making property buying easier, easier for people. So that's the kind of business the startup Amit and Ankur, they have. Amit, could you come on camera? Because we have some interesting questions, and I'm going to pose those questions, and
Yeah.
because that's the fun. I remove my spotlight, and yeah, over to you guys. So there are some great questions I'm going to ask from all of you. First, very simple question. On average, how many hours do you work?
I think 12.
12. 12. Ankur,
Yeah.
Yeah,
about
actually,
you?
yeah. When you are running a startup, I feel every waking hour you are kind of working because there's no way to shut down your mind, and whatever you're doing, it's always running in the back of your mind.
Yeah,
But at the same time, again, I'm like the worst person to say that working the entire day is not a very healthy thing to do, and that is not what you should strive for. You should put in quality hours and find time to do everything else in your life. Again,
very good.
I don't practice that, but I feel that is the right way of living your life.
But
Yeah,
very
I
good.
try to balance out the working hours with some, special attention to taking time off.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's important.
So listen, I think what I gather from Ankur is he made a very honest admission, and that's the world of startups. That your mind never shuts, right? You may not be working on your desk or something, but your mind is still grappling with a specific problem, and that's the fun of being in startup, right? So that's it. I have another good question. Very short answer uh, from both of you. Where did you get the inspiration for Fractional? One was all your experience, but what was that moment of inspiration? Ye karna hai.
See, the concept of fractional has been there for a very, very long time. To be honest, we were looking at the market, and there were a couple of, sorry, I just got a call. There were a couple of other startups in the space who were doing something similar, and we thought that we could do it much better. And sometimes you just know, when an idea's time has really come. So yeah, that was the inspiration. That was the trigger.
Fantastic. So, whose inspiration was this, Ankur or Amit? I
It
know
was
the answer.
mine and Rahul's, and
Yeah,
Ankur joined in because Ankur was, while what I understand is that Ankur was interested in the space, not necessarily real estate, but he's looking at from a more conceptual tokenization approach. Means I'll let Ankur actually add his inspiration.
yes, Ankur, your inspiration.
Right. So again, just like Amit said, I was working in the blockchain domain, and tokenization is actually a real world use case of the blockchain
Could you briefly,
technology.
very in simple words, explain tokenization to our
Sure.
school
So
children?
right. So tokenization is basically you take a real world asset and break it down into tokens. So for example, there is one apartment that is, let's say, worth 1 crore rupees. You take that asset and you mint tokens corresponding to that asset. So it's like shares or owning shares of a company. So now you have broken that down into 10,000 pieces. So now 10,000 people can own a part of that. So that is how you can actually tokenize any real world asset. And that is the future of finance and investing actually. So I
So the
was
concept, boys and girls, what Amit and Ankur are saying, that in the world of finance, and big asset can be very, it could be $1 million, $2 million, $20 million, but and you can do a collective holding of that asset, and different people can pool in different amounts of money to hold that asset, which means splitting that asset into small pieces, and then to manage it through a nice software. Is that fractional about?
yeah, broadly yes.
Right. So that is that's okay. Okay. There's another interesting question, sir. Is it advisable to start credit from a small age? Ishani Bahil, she's asking. Ishani, would you want to explain your question? You can unmute and explain. Ishanvi.
Can you ask that question again, Shivesh?
Excuse me?
Yeah, Ishanvi, please.
Yeah. Also, I have heard so many times, even on when I'm on Pinterest about money and all, they always say that you should start your credit at a really small age. So, what is this credit, and is it true?
Means what I think those people are telling you to do is try to save, value money, how investing works, and get that sensibility around money and saving from an early stage. As a matter of fact, I have one son. He's 12 years old, and I started giving him pocket money, and I also opened up a bank account for him. So he got some idea about what it actually means and how banks, what, a faint idea of how banks work, how interest comes in. You should know those kind of basic things. Essentially, the idea is not, that people or kids actually save money. Uh, it is just a sensibility of how to value money, and not, that sensibility also extends to the fact that you should not waste money, because then you will appreciate and value it more. So I think that is what it means.
Okay, Ankur, there is a question for you. And this is a question from Nishtha. Nishtha, I wrote somewhere, great question. You want to ask Nishtha Parashar to Ankur, sir?
Yes, sir. I want to ask that how have sir priorities changed from when they get first started, when they started their business?
Ankur, Nishtha has a very innocent question. She's asking, have your priorities changed when you started? Or does it keep changing? I can't see Ankur. Ankur, did he get logged off? Amit, would you like to take this?
And that's a very difficult question, actually, because
Yeah.
priorities, when I was probably your age, my priority was to find time out to go and play cricket and get decent enough numbers so that I don't get, marks, so that I don't get scolded or get boxed into a corner, that I'm not spending enough time studying. So, but as you kind of grow, as you kind of get exposed to the world, startup or not, your priorities kind of change. But if I were to just look at simply the startup phase versus my entire previous life, then yes, the hunger behind making something, proving something right, and getting something successful, it makes you compromise on your personal time. I have not found an entrepreneur who has been able to successfully manage both at an early stage of a startup. Eventually, things do kind of pan out favorably, but sometimes it's just too late to make those changes or reverse those behaviors, because your startup is like your own baby. So it's very difficult to plug out. So yeah, priorities change. Personal priorities do take a backseat a lot of times.
Okay, I have a
I hope
question
I
for...
was able to answer.
No, great answer, Amit. I have a question for Ankur.
Yeah.
And okay, this is, should I ask Sriya Nayak to ask this question? Sriya, over to you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much for allowing me. Sir, I wanted to ask that as you've had so many startups, some very successful and some not very successful, how did
Right.
you know exactly when to stop? That this is the point where we should let it go, because some companies come back from the dead, whereas some die trying. When do you know that, okay, this is the moment for it and we can let go of it now?
Right. So, like I mentioned, in case of Kimio, we had set a benchmark for ourselves that in 48 months we have to be at 1 million users. Otherwise, the platform doesn't really hold any value, because a video sharing platform without a big network is just a software. It's driven by content. So the tech was one part of it that we were fairly confident about, that we can very comfortably build. But the sales and marketing side of it, because all three of us were tech co-founders, so we didn't know if we could actually get it there. So for, all we could do was set a deadline and a benchmark for ourselves that before we actually started off, and obviously these could be revised at a later point. But we set it for ourselves and we stuck to it, because again, recently I was talking to Amit about it, and he said, okay, you were at 150. What if you were at 700? Would you have still quit, or would you have kept it running? So if we were in that situation, we would have definitely considered it. And at the time, we don't know what call we would have taken. So startups.
Sorry for interrupting you, sir. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry for interrupting you. I just wanted to know, sir, that you set a benchmark for yourself, but how did you decide in that fraction that this project can end now? Because you could have kept trying to make it bigger, but you stopped. What was that fractional decision, that thinking and mind application for it?
Right. So, so why we were lagging was because we, between our team, we felt we were missing somebody who had the skills at selling and marketing the product. We were not able to do it right. And we looked around and we couldn't really find anybody who could handle that bit of the business. So even if we would have given it another 2 years, we didn't see us as the three co-founders getting it to a point where we could get to 1 million or 10 million users. So at the moment, the only thing that we looked at was, can we actually push forward and take it to a point where this business should be, or given the current market, are we the right people to actually be running this business in this state? And when we felt the answer was no, that's when we decided that it's time to let go and focus on our core strengths. Because again, like I said, there are enough opportunities out there that you can always find something else, something better. But that opportunity and the business, everything has to suit you. You could force yourself into a situation, but as an entrepreneur, you are always trying to break new ground. You are trying to build something new. If you are not the right person, if you're not the best person to do that, you won't be able to get it to that point. So that is the feeling that we got at the end of 2 years. So we decided to shut it down.
Fantastic. Ankur, I have worked with Ankur, and I know his passion. And when he says you have to keep breaking new grounds, he gets, if he's not breaking those new grounds, he gets bored. And then he says, okay, it's quits. I must do something. Okay, Amit, a question for you.
Sure.
What is the, let's say, the best or most important financial advice you have given ever to anyone? And what was the outcome of that? And I'm not going to ask about the financial advice that we keep giving to each other, both of us.
I think I'll rather put it in context of what the audience is.
Yes.
Right. And, to this audience, I'll say that start saving early, even if it's a small amount, so that you get money smart. Being money smart at your age is the most important financial advice I'll give you, because you don't have a focus of or responsibility of running something. But to become money wise, it will help you be aware of so many things which are happening in the world. If it is possible, ask your parents to open up a small account for you and give you access to a few platforms where you can also play with that money, invest a little and all that. So I think parents would be more than happy to do that. Yeah. So
okay,
so
boys and girls, I'll take two more questions, and don't worry, because we'll have on daily basis more and more entrepreneurs coming. So sometimes the question could be similar, and but I also want to use the expertise of people who are sitting here, and that's why I'm going to take that question. Now, this is lovely. Shubha Kulshresht, would you like to ask? Shubha Kulshresht. Okay, we can't hear Shubha, but I'm going to ask her a question on her behalf, and this is to Ankur.
Yes, sir. Can I ask?
Yes, please.
Sir, how can we get to know that our idea will work or not? Because I'm having an idea, but it is on a large scale.
So, see, the first thing I would like to say is, okay, how do you define scale? Like, is it a big idea, or is it an idea that will involve that will be relevant to a lot of people, or is it an idea that will need a lot of people to implement it?
So its economic feasibility is good, but I don't know that its technical feasibility and financial feasibility will work or not.
Okay.
Like I'm having an idea of solar system, like using plastic instead of using silicon, because silicon is so expensive and we import it from China and Russia.
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, so that is more of a R&D thing actually. So to get it there, you need a certain kind of expertise to actually build a product like that, and you need the right kind of people and a lot of money. So I don't know. Okay, something like this obviously has to happen, and this will save us a lot of money, and this will also help save the planet. So obviously, it's a great idea. But again, the feasibility of this has to be studied first, and at the same time, the practicality of it. Whether, like I said, you have to first know if you are the right person to implement it. If you feel that there's nobody else who will put who can do this better, then obviously you should go for it. But again, there is no idea. You should never start with a big idea. Google also started with just a search engine, and then they built so many products around it. So you should always start with the smallest piece of the idea, make that viable, and then build on top of that. Because if you start with the very large idea, and if you start doing 10 things on day one, that will never work, because
Great. Great
there is
answer,
so much
Ankur. I think,
just
can I just chip in, Ankur? What Shubha Ankur is saying that, and look, at idea level, plastic-based solar energy tapping, it looks like a great idea. And if you have to get started, you don't need to be burning so much of money. Start small. And how do you start small? That's a real trick, right? So you have to actually start researching. Go to the research papers, see what is the what are the what is the current research on plastic's ability to tap solar energy. What is the efficiency? So if you start doing that bit of groundwork, then you know where you are. So just to explain, let's say a solar panel, silicon based, it's able to tap, let's say, 15% of solar energy. If it's non-silicon panel, if it's a plastic panel, does it take 10%, 7%, 2%, 0.5%, or 100%? That answer you need to figure out. And if that answer is looking good to you, then you also need to ask why people are not using, right? And then you also say that, okay, I can do something in this plastic and take this 2% to 20%. And that is a research that Ankur is trying you to think about, and that's the kind of hard work and rigor which goes. So some ideas could be, his first point was that some ideas could be very research oriented, and some ideas could quickly take off from where it is into a business. Make sense, Ankur?
yeah, definitely.
Right. Okay. One last question, Amit. This is coming to you. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. How do you get people invest in your business?
Well, smart question.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Well, business. See, there are two ways of looking at a business. You may have an idea which you're very passionate about, like this discussion that we were just having about a plastic versus silica. It could be just built out of passion. It may not make economic sense, and people can just persevere. But if you are looking at getting into this to raise money, and that's a very legit or a very valid approach which people pursue, then you will, essentially, would want to have a minimum viable product. what it means is you have a concept, you've done your basic work, you have run it through one basic cycle, and there is validation. So that's the underlying word. There is validation, though at a very small stage. Then you get an investor in. Of course, investor will not only look at the minimum viable product that you have, but will also look at the potential, their own investment preferences, and the team which is running it, and several other factors. So, and this whole process of raising money, it's a laborious task. You talk to a lot of them, and then it has its own failures, and there is a success at the end of the day. There are smart ways of doing that too, but I think that will make this discussion a bit more complicated. But minimum viable product is if for that solar thing, one could actually create at a small scale some kind of a proof of concept that should be good enough.
Okay, so boys and girls, can I ask all of you to give our speakers a huge round of applause for being so interactive and candid and being, great with us.
It has been a pleasure.
Lovely.
Amazing
Amit,
audience, amazing group. I must admire, the candidness, the smart intellect that all of you brought to this whole discussion. This was really a wonderful experience for me, and I'm sure for Ankur also.
Definitely.
right. So Amit and Ankur, thanks very much. You can sign off. I'll take about 2 minutes with all the boys